people's minds are so powerful that that your mind created the problem and it can uncreate the problem. I think that's probably a really big, important thing to underscore for everybody to realize.
Your mind can be your most valuable asset or your biggest liability, and you get to choose. This is the Building Psychological Strength podcast, where we explore ways to build resilience, build confidence, and make our minds work in our favor. We draw from the fields of psychology and life design to help us intentionally create a rock-solid mindset upon which a vibrant life experience can be built. My name is April Seifert. I'm a psychologist, a life design strategist, and co-founder of Peak Mind, the Center for Psychological Strength. Each week, I'll introduce you to an expert, a concept, a technique, or a hands-on practice that will help you build psychological strength in your own life. These are the tools to help you thrive. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Building Psychological Strength podcast. My name is April Seifert and I'm your host. This week we are talking with a woman who has put together a modality for helping people understand their subconscious mind, understand where limiting beliefs and aspects that may limit their confidence, where those come from, and to actively help alleviate them. This week, we are speaking to Michele Molitor, and she is the founder and CEO of Nectar Consulting. She works with people in order to help them find and eliminate mental and emotional blocks, and using something that she calls rapid rewiring, she helps people build greater confidence and then ultimately achieve more success in their life. So this might be in business or in relationships or in other domains of your life. In this interview, we talk in depth about what rapid rewiring is, and here's why I think it's really cool. This technique that she has developed herself has been the culmination of so many years of study. So she's dug into things like emotional intelligence and neuroscience and organizational psychology. She has been certified in rapid transformational therapy. She also has areas of study in hypnosis and things like neuro-linguistic programming. So what she's doing is something that I think is so brilliant, is taking the best of the best from all of these powerful different fields and bringing them together into one modality and one way that she works with her clients. So what's neat about it is that her goal as a practitioner is to help people understand what might be happening within their subconscious. So what are those automatic thought patterns that are just running in the background and influencing their life? What are they? And where might they have come from? And now that we know that, can we replace them with something that is a little bit more just a little bit less self-limiting, something a little bit more empowering? So her work is so transformational, and I'm really excited about this interview with her today. Now, before we dive into it, I need to make one really quick announcement. We have been talking about how we're bringing people into the Peak Mind membership for $1 for their first month, and that is still the case. However, that offer is going to be ending soon. So we don't know the exact date, but it'll be ending here within the next few weeks. If you have at all been on the fence or thinking about joining the Peak Mind membership, P.S. in this episode, we talk again about how much control we all have over psychological strength and the way that our minds operate. This is just yet another person who's corroborating that information and that foundational way that our minds work. If you've at all been thinking about joining the Peak Mind membership, now is the time. You're going to get in for $1 per month or $1 for your first month. That offer is not going to be available for much longer. So if you're thinking about it, get in now. All right, you guys, I'm so excited for you to meet Michele Molitor. I'm not going to delay anymore. Let's roll that interview. Michele, I'm so happy that you are joining us for this episode of the podcast. I know it's going to be a really valuable one. So thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, April. I'm delighted to be here with you and your listeners today.
So I gave everyone a little bit of a background on you and the work that you do. So I'm hoping that we can just dive right in and kind of get to the good stuff and talk a little bit about this work that you do within the realm of rapid rewiring, which is not something I've ever heard of before. So I'm hoping we can start there. Just like tell us what the heck rapid rewiring is.
Yes, be more than happy to. So I have been an executive coach now, April, for 18 years. My anniversary is coming up in like 2 weeks. Yay. And through my many years of coaching and training, I've always been seeking, how can I work better, smarter, faster? How can I be the best coach, the best human being that I can be? And have discovered many different modalities, which aspects have been incorporated into my work. And there were still some of my own pieces, blind spots that I couldn't get at. I knew that they were there. I knew they were holding me back, but I couldn't quite get rid of them until I discovered the work of Marissa Peer, who's a world-renowned therapist. And she's developed a process called rapid transformational therapy, or RTT for short. And in doing some work with her, I found in a matter of weeks relief from some of the challenges that I was dealing with, that I had been trying to overcome, uproot, pull out, eliminate from my psyche for nearly 20 years. So you can imagine my excitement that after all this time, finally something created a really powerful shift for me. So when she started training people in her methodology, I was a big yes, a hell yes, as a matter of fact, and went on to become trained and certified by her. And as I was doing the work and practicing with people, I was left with, well, what happened? What's shifting? How is that impacting my client? And so ultimately what I've done is I've combined RTT with my coaching inside of a 30 or 90-day program, which I call my rapid rewiring program. And so let's break that down a little bit further, because RTT is a really unique combination that brings together cognitive behavioral therapy, neuro-linguistic programming, and hypnosis inside of about a 2-hour session. Okay. And then I'm following that up with coaching sessions each week, which enables a client to access the limiting beliefs, the fears, the health issues at a subconscious level that's enabling them to get at the root cause of what manifested the belief to begin with, right? From there, we're able to shift and change the story that they've been carrying around their whole life, and then transform that with new empowering beliefs and messages that they're telling themselves, literally rewiring the neural pathways in their brain.
That is amazing. So I like almost don't know where to start because there was so much good stuff there. I'm gonna start just foundationally and make sure that everybody is on the same page. You mentioned that rapid rewiring has these 3 components to it, right? RTT, you mentioned NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, and you mentioned hypnosis. Can you give just like a quick brief synopsis of what each of those 3 components are? I just want to make sure people understand those before we dive into the rest of the amazing stuff you just said.
Sure. So cognitive behavioral therapy is a type of therapy that's usually done in talk therapy. So when you hear folks, I'm going to see my therapist this week, they go and they sit and they talk with their therapist. And cognitive behavioral therapy is one modality that air quotes typical therapists use, right? You're talking about the challenges you're dealing with at a conscious level, and working through the problems that way. Neuro-linguistic programming is a way of using language to create and influence your mind or other people. It's used a lot in sales, for example. It's used in different ways in a myriad of different industries, but it's essentially positive suggestion. And then hypnosis is essentially, and it's not woo-woo, it's not It can be used on stage in funny ways, but the way that I use it is a very scientifically proven way. And essentially what we're doing is we're dropping someone into a very relaxed state of alpha brain waves. Now, alpha brain waves are that place in between when you're consciously awake and you're drifting off into a deep sleep. And at an alpha brainwave state, they call it your super learning state because your mind is very suggestible in that state. So working with a client, you'll be very relaxed. You'll be able to answer my questions that I'm asking you, but your body will feel very, very relaxed, almost as if you just woke up from a nap, right? That super like, oh, I don't really want to move yet kind of state, right? Because in that state, in an alpha brainwave state, what that's allowing me to do is to talk directly with your subconscious and bypass your critical judging conscious mind, your prefrontal cortex, which is your logic and reasoning. So we're bypassing that, which creates some resistance sometimes, right? And allows me to speak with your subconscious and ask, what's at the root, the cause, the reason of this problem, this block, this fear, this phobia, whatever it might be. And because your subconscious mind is a giant storage container, it's a huge memory bank, right? Everything that's ever happened to you, April, is stored in your subconscious. It's all about data in, storage, and retrieval. That's all it's about, right? And so we're able to access those memories that influenced you at whatever age. It might have been when you were a very young age or as an adolescent or a young adult. But you're able to bring together several different scenes or events in your life that are in relationship to a belief. So, for example, a typical belief that I see in a lot of clients is the belief of I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not something enough to make the grade. And because I'm not enough, these things aren't available to me. You know, happiness, joy, love, success, et cetera, et cetera. And so when we're accessing a person's subconscious mind around, well, where did you get the idea that you weren't enough? We'll go back to different scenes and events somewhere along their life path. And they're able to revisit that scene, not relive it, but as if they were looking at it on a computer monitor or over the shoulder of someone else, right? Like, oh, yeah, I remember that happening to me. And they can see and experience that scene again, but now as an adult, they can rewrite it. They can rewrite how they'd like to feel instead, because your subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between what's real and what's imagined in an alpha brainwave state, right? That's why it's so powerful. And so in rewriting the scene from feeling not enough to feeling enough, you're literally creating a ripple effect all the way forward. Because now, as an adult, you've eliminated the emotional charge around that particular event where you created that particular belief. And so you can make new empowering choices based on this new perspective. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. I love that. You know, when I've talked with people, my background is in social cognitive psychology. So the cognitive part of it, we did a lot of subconscious research. And what I like to talk to people about in terms of like understanding what the subconscious is, that's one of those words that I think conjures up mental images of like palm readers and mystical things. And it isn't. All it is that part of your brain that is extremely adaptive, and it's trying to learn just by passive osmosis, just by experience and seeing what it sees in patterns in the world. It's just trying to make sense of everything and make it easy for you. And where I think it's interesting with your work is, it's funny. I went to graduate school in Nebraska, and there's a huge law and psychology program in Nebraska. And whenever they talk about sexual harassment, they always talk about how it has to be severe and or pervasive to be considered sexual harassment. So I've totally stolen the way that I think about the subconscious from law and psychology, sexual harassment. This is where this comes from.
Okay.
I talk to people about how for your subconscious to sort of strongly encode something, for it to be a pattern that starts to impact your behavior or your emotions or your conscious thoughts, it can be a severe experience or a pervasive experience. So you could have an emotionally charged, severe experience that it only takes once, and man, your subconscious locks onto that. Or it can be something that is sort of pervasive in the environment that you grew up. You just knew that these were the rules and this is what was expected and this is how people like me act. And your subconscious can pick up on both of those things. And I can imagine that the stuff that you encounter probably hits both sides of the coin, either very emotionally charged severe things or just things that were repeated enough times through, as you mentioned, several different memories and several different experiences to cause a very firm belief.
Absolutely. I love that you put it in that language, because it's very, very true, right? Anytime you have an emotional event, right, your brain releases a set of chemicals and neurotransmitters. Adrenaline, cortisol, for example, are the two popular favorites, right? Because they're creating that fear response so you can run. Your amygdala, or Amy, as I like to call her, is just trying to help you stay safe and alive and on the planet, right? But what happens, whether it is severe or pervasive, is that those chemicals are dispersed throughout your body, and I call it emotional residue. It leaves a cellular imprint in your body, right? That then anytime you come somewhere near an event that sort of looks, smells, or acts like that originating event, your amygdala, your Amy, will go, whoa, hey, stop that, right? That's dangerous. Don't do that, right? And so your body will go back into that same fear response.
I love that. It's just it's such a clear way of thinking about situations that might feel obscure to us when we're in them. Like, man, why am I reacting this way? Or why do I feel so uncomfortable in this situation? And what I don't think people realize is subconscious thoughts, we don't, in any typical way, we don't know the content of them. Like they're nothing that like pops up into your head and you can sort of monitor the content of them the way that you can with conscious thoughts. Like, hey, right now I'm thinking about lunch. That's coming up. So yeah, I'm going to think about lunch. I know the content of that thought is lunch. You don't realize that running in the background, the other 80% of what's going on is totally outside your awareness in normal circumstances, but it's so influential. So you don't see the thoughts happening, but you do see the weird emotional response you're getting, and you can't explain why. Life can be so much more than simply going to work and waiting for the weekend. But deep down, you already know that. You know that life can be so much more vibrant. You know you were made for more than just passively going through the motions. You know you can thrive, but to do that, you have to start from the inside out. And that is why I'm so excited to announce that for a limited time, we're offering you the opportunity to join us in the Peak Mind membership for only $1 for your first month. That's right, $1 to join us in the full Peak Mind membership. All you have to do to take advantage of this amazing offer is to visit us at www.peakmindpsychology.com, click on the membership, and enter the code THRIVE at checkout. Think about it. We all know what we need to do to keep our bodies strong. But what about our minds? What if you had the tools to build the psychological strength, confidence, and resilience to help you thrive at work, at home, and in the rest of your life? What if you made the commitment to living your life by design and not by default? All of this is possible. The goal of Peak Mind, the Center for Psychological Strength, is to help you build the mental toughness, flexibility, and resilience to thrive in your life. We draw from the fields of psychology and life design to help you intentionally create the vibrant life experience you know is possible. Through live online workshops, a 24/7 on-demand library, expert interviews, and monthly challenges, our members are building the psychological strength that it takes to thrive through life's ups and downs. And like I said, you can do it too. For a limited time, we're offering you the opportunity to join us for only $1 for your first month. Just visit www.peakmindpsychology.com, click on the membership, and enter the code THRIVE at checkout. Your mind can be your most valuable asset or your biggest liability, and you get to choose. So what choice are you making? Join us in the Peak Mind membership before this amazing offer goes away.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm actually finishing up an article today that I'm happy to share with you and your listeners about that. I'm calling it the 95-5% rule, because your subconscious runs 95% of your computing power and your conscious mind is only 5% of your computing power. And so our emotions, which are run by your subconscious, are so powerful. Your sight, your sound, your smells, right? Your sense of touch. So if, for example, let's say you were 5 years old and your mom was baking cookies and your dad came in and yelled at you and you got in trouble for something and spanked you, right? Your body could very easily connect that fear of being spanked with the smell of those chocolate chip cookies, right? So anytime you smell chocolate chip cookies, your body might go, "Oh, what's that?" Right? And again, as you said, you're not consciously aware of why you feel uncomfortable when you're eating those chocolate chip cookies, but you just know that something feels weird. And it's those tiebacks, those connections that are made because, one of the principles of the mind is, emotions are more powerful than logic, right? So you can try to logically think your way out of a fear or a challenge, but if the emotions in your subconscious are far more powerful, they're going to overwrite that logical thinking, right? And so the only way to defeat one emotion is to override it with a more powerful, different emotion. That makes sense?
Yep, totally. I love that you use the smell example. The example that I've used with people is also a smell one, but in a different direction. Like if you're ever walking through a crowd of people and you smell the cologne that someone who maybe you dated a decade ago or whatever, the cologne that they smelled, and you're like flooded with emotions about that person, you logically know that they're not there, but your body thinks they are. Like your body is triggered to have the same emotion that you did when that person was around you, but here you are just in this crowd of strangers having this moment because you smelled this cologne. It's so funny. We are just quirky little animals.
Yes, we are. Delightfully so.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm wondering if we can dig into this a little bit more because, you've talked a bit about how, hypnosis and just this whole notion of rapid rewiring happens. What does this look like in terms of people who walk into a session with you, or I walk into an engagement with you, I guess? What kind of transformations do people experience when they're going through something like this with you?
I love to tell people about this because I have so many stories of amazing transformations of people. So typically over a 30-day period, April, we start with a 2-hour RTT session. And I do all my work virtually online via Zoom. So I've worked with clients all over the world. Yes, you can do hypnosis over Skype and video. It's hilarious, but it totally works. And inside of that first session, right, we have Discover, Rewire, Transform. So we'll talk for a little while. I have an intake form that I'll have you fill out so I get a real detailed understanding of what the challenge is that you're dealing with. Then in the Rewire portion, that's when I drop you into that relaxed state of hypnosis. And we go back and visit some of those scenes. And then in the third portion, the transformation, that's when I take all of the data that I gathered from you and I weave it into a customized recording while you're still in hypnosis, inserting new empowering beliefs, new habits, new perspectives, right? In a very particular hypnotic way, as you might think. Now, I take that recording and I mix in some binaural music with it, and I send that to you to listen every day for 3 to 4 weeks. Okay. So that lays the foundation of the transformation that we're working on. Okay. So now, weeks 2, 3, and 4, we have 60-minute coaching sessions. And as you're listening to your recording every day and you're writing in your private online journal space, noticing what's shifting for you, we then go to the coaching sessions, which then gives you a way to process what's shifting, because it's kind of like doing a brain detox, right? If you've ever done, say, a sugar detox where you take all the sugar out of your diet for 10 days and your body is like, hey, what, wait, come back, right? So your amygdala kind of does the same thing, like, wait, no, well, I don't know if I like that new belief. Whoa. And so it gets a little wobbly in the middle, right? And so I'm there for my clients in between our coaching sessions via text, via email, and I give them other assignments as well. So, for example, I might have someone do a values assignment, right, to get really clear on the core values of what's really important for them and why it's important for them to achieve the goal that they're trying to achieve, right? So each step creates greater and greater clarity as they continue to let go of, as I like to say, the junk in their trunk, the old baggage that they've been carrying around that they no longer need around a particular area. So over those 30 days, they're listening to the recording. We're having these conversations online and through email, and they're noticing how their body is feeling and responding as they go through this, right? And so some really amazing transformations that I've seen. I had one client come to me. She's like, I want to grow my business. Every time I get to a certain financial level, I somehow sabotage myself and then I make less money. And then, oh yeah, by the way, I have these horrible bouts of IBS or inflammatory bowel syndrome. I'm like, well, that sounds nasty. How about we get rid of that? She's like, okay, that'd be great. Because it had
yeah, why not? Let's get rid of it.
15 years she'd been dealing with that. And so by the end of our work together, she emailed me. She said, okay, I've been listening to my recording every day, just as you prescribed. Today, I had my biggest, most successful business meeting ever, and my body is fully on board. There's no fear response. And when I reached back to her like a month later to get a testimonial, she's like, what did we work on? Can you remind me? I was like, wow, okay. we knocked it out completely. She couldn't even remember it.
Yeah.
I have another client that I worked with over a period of 90 days. And Chris is a really amazing young man. He built a multi-million-dollar company by the time he was 27. Super high-performing kind of guy, until his body said, nope, not doing that anymore. And he suffered severe adrenal fatigue and digestive issues and literally had to put everything on hold, because he literally had no strength to do anything. Taking the garbage cans out was the most he could do on a day, right? And so when I met Chris through a podcast, actually, he had been working with doctors for 2.5 years and was very slowly making a recovery, managing his diet, managing his sleep, managing his stress, etc., having regular blood work done all throughout. And inside of the 90 days that we worked together, he was able to get at the root causes of the things that were driving him so hard to, as he would always say, I'm going to crush it. No matter what it was, I'm going to crush it. And that intense, extreme stress that caused his body to go, nope, can't do it anymore. And for him, he got to this root cause, part of which was feeling not enough because of the abuse that he had suffered as a kid, right? And so in understanding that more clearly and being able to connect those dots, his health has significantly improved. Like by 30% more inside of 90 days than it had over 2.5 years, right? And he says he feels better than he's ever felt probably in his whole life. And his new business is, on track to, be another $1 million plus business any moment now. So, I see transformations like that, and it's just so rewarding to know that people's minds are so powerful that that your mind created the problem and it can uncreate the problem. I think that's probably a really big, important thing to underscore for everybody to realize. Your body, your mind created the problem as a way to protect you. And now you can rewire your neural pathways to have those negative things dissipate and support you in a good way.
I want to highlight two things that you said. Number one, there's a connection that I don't want people to miss between what you just said and something you said earlier. So earlier you were talking about Amy, our lovely amygdala, which I've never heard anybody call it that. That's hysterical. I'm going to from now on. Like, Amy, you need to calm down.
That to me. So I was like, I'm taking that. Thank you.
Yes, Amy, calm down. So thank you to your client. But you talked about the amygdala and think about this, right? The physiological response that happens when we're in a fear-provoking situation. Cortisol, adrenaline were, two you mentioned. So many times people think about physical health and mental health as two separate things. There's this sharp distinction that we make between, okay, I go to this doctor for my physical health needs. I go to a psychologist or a coach or someone like you for my mental health needs. And there's a very big disconnect between those two things. They are not disconnected.
Yes.
You cannot, I don't know how we can, in one conversation, everyone can accept the fact that, yep, cool, when I'm really nervous and really afraid, my body kicks out a bunch of adrenaline. And when it runs out of adrenaline, cortisol kicks in. And if you're in that situation chronically, you have a chronic cortisol, overflooding going on. I don't know how we can accept that in one moment and then wonder how or question the link between our psychological state and things like heart attacks and ulcers and GI problems and, other sorts of pain. I'm not saying, I'm not discounting every case and saying there's nothing physiologically going on. The point I'm making is there is something physiologically going on. And lots of times your mind is so powerful, it can be a big contributing factor in that physiological symptom. And so I didn't want people to miss that because it was so good.
Thank you. Yeah, it is tremendous. As I said to you before we started the recording, I'm secretly a science geek, and I read neuroscience books for fun. And it is never ceases to amaze me how resilient our minds are, how powerful our brains are to create health and well-being in our body. I'm reading a book now called The Brain That Changes Itself. And there's, filled with scientific studies of how, say, for example, a person who's had a stroke, right? It literally kills a section of your brain, okay? But they have proven now that you can do different exercises, for example, with, say, your left arm, you no longer have mobility in your left arm because of a stroke. But if you start to try to use your left arm instead of your good arm, right, by putting your good arm in a sling and being forced to use your left arm, even when it's hard and challenging, your brain literally starts to rewrite those neural pathways around those dead portions of your brain cells, mind blown. And people regain the ability to use those parts of their bodies. It's fascinating.
It's amazing. It is. It's totally amazing. And something else you said that I want to make sure that I highlight, you were talking about how, our minds and these thought patterns in the subconscious can cause these problems. But then we can do things to rewrite what those habits are and alleviate them. That is I did not pay her to say this. It's just a fact. our minds, we say in Peak Mind all the time, your mind can be your most valuable asset or your biggest liability, and you get to choose which one that is. You get to choose whether you stay with those habits and things that are not working, or you can decide through a variety of modalities, you can decide that you're going to work on them and you're going to write a new script that your mind is going to operate by. Is it easy? No. Is it like overnight? Not really. No. But you absolutely can work on that. So I had to highlight that because we say this and it sounds like a fancy marketing tagline, but it isn't. It's basic. A basic way that your mind operates that you get to have a bit of control over. So I had to highlight that too, because it's just something that people need to hear a dozen times a day, I think.
Yeah, let me give you a great example of that, April.
Yes, please do.
It is so, and it was a very fast transformation. So this is a client that Marissa Peer had actually worked with, and she came to her with severely sweaty palms and feet, and she was 39, 40 years old. She'd been dealing with her whole life. She had done all sorts of weird treatments to get her hands and her feet to stop sweating. And she was embarrassed by it. Was it hurting her health? No, but it was uncomfortable and embarrassing, etc. And so in regression, the scenes that came up were a couple of different things. So as a very little girl, she was very shy. Secondly, her mom would drop her off at their house and she'd have to sit and wait for like 10 minutes before her big sister got home from school because her mom had to go to work. And she was afraid to go inside of the house because she thought there was ghosts in there. So she would sit out on the front porch step all by herself, and she was really afraid. And then the third thing was she didn't like that her big sister got more attention than she did. Okay. And so these are all seemingly benign incidents in the recall of the memories that came up. But part of the work that we do in hypnosis is we have the client connect the dots between those things. How are these three things connected? And what the client came up with was, wow, okay, I wanted more attention. And so my body created this way to get more attention while simultaneously enabling me as a way to process my anxiety because I didn't know how to speak my truth when I was 5. And so literally, when you think about that, her body was crying her anxiety out through her hands and feet, which conveniently gave her more attention because it was, quote, a problem to be fixed that made her, quote, special. And so she would get more attention than her sister.
Wow.
And so when she realized this in hypnosis and went through the transformation, she literally was able to stop the sweating. Like that, it was done because she saw the connections and she was able to go, oh, well, I'm no longer that 5-year-old. I don't need to do that anymore. I can speak my truth. I'm not a fearful little girl or a shy little girl anymore. I'm a grown-ass woman and I can say what I need to say. And it stopped. Just like that, because she told her mind, she commanded and instructed her mind to say, thank you, body, for creating that. It was really powerful, but I no longer need that. You can stop it now.
Wow.
And it did.
That's amazing. It's incredible what a bit of self-awareness and just intentional sort of diagnosis or analysis can do.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm wondering if we can kind of turn a corner to how do people get started with this? How do they start to uncover, what some of those thoughts might be, what some of those beliefs might be? I know you mentioned before we hopped on to record that you have some resources for people, and in particular ones that they're not like, let me give you definitions of things. I'm sure that's included too, but resources that you can actually like do for yourself to like help you through a particular problem. So I'm hoping you can highlight some of those for us.
Yes, absolutely. So first and foremost, it's starting to notice what's working and what's not working in your life. Where are you uncomfortable all the time? What is it that's creating you anxiety, fear, etc.? And just becoming more aware of it, right? Awareness is the first step to creating positive change. Okay. And so once you start to notice, you might journal, you might draw, you might, find the way to express what those things are for you. so you can start to realize what the patterns are for you and your own behaviors. And so some of the resources that I have, if you go to my website, Nectar Consulting, Nectar consulting.com, if you go to my favorite section, which is the brain candy section on my website, I have a variety of guided meditations and ebooks with transformation recordings. So, for example, my ebook, Saying No with Grace and Grit, comes with a 25-minute guided transformation recording, which is a hypnosis recording that can help you learn how to take back your power, to feel enough to stand up and speak your truth in a good way versus in a fearful way. So yeah, have a look there in the brain candy section and, enjoy. There's all sorts of great stuff. There's also, you can access my latest book called Breakthrough Healing that I co-authored with several different folks around some natural healing modalities that people use all around the planet. So yeah, really listening to that inner voice that you have and seeing what's the predominant message that you're giving yourself, because your mind responds to two things, April: the words you say to yourself and the pictures you see in your mind. So if, you're spending more than 50% of your time thinking worrisome thoughts, fearful thoughts, anxious thoughts, then that's the reality you're creating for yourself. So noticing that is the first step. And then starting to flip the script. Even if you don't believe yourself, start telling yourself on a daily basis, I am enough. Write it on your mirror, put it on your phone, write it on your hand, put sticky notes around your house. I am enough. I used to drive about an hour regularly to go work with a client. And I would be in the car and I'd be driving, singing my own little song. I am enough. I'm amazing. I'm wonderful. I'm lovable. And I don't sing very well. So you can imagine how entertaining that was. Anybody who's been watching. But, the more you repeat things to yourself, the more true they become for you. So if you're telling yourself, I'm not enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I'm not lovable, then that's the reality you're creating for yourself. So change the script. Tell yourself the good things that you want to become, even if you don't believe it just yet, and you'll start moving in that direction.
Yep. It goes back to that passive subconscious mind that all it's doing is looking for patterns. It's not evaluating it. It's just taking it in, and it'll take whatever you give it.
Exactly.
One, I'll definitely link up. I'll link up both your book, Breakthrough Healing. I'll link up that brain candy section in your show notes page, because I think those are great resources. Particularly, it's not common that I talk to somebody who would actually give away a hypnosis like that. So take her up on that offer. That's incredible. The other thing I'm going to link up is a recent episode we did with a man named Isaac Lidsky. He's a best-selling author, has an amazing TED Talk, the craziest resume of anybody I've ever seen. I can't even get into it, but he says a very complimentary message to what you just said around the way that our mind constructs the reality that we live in based on the lens that we have from our subconscious mind. So I'm going to link that up just in case people are really resonating with what Michele is saying in this domain. You can just get like a bunch of different perspectives on it, because that's another one of those really foundational pieces about our mind and how it works. So one more resource for you.
That sounds great.
Before we wrap up today, I want to ask you about your thoughts about psychological strength. What does psychological strength look like to you? What is it in the context of the work that you do?
Psychological strength is, from my experience and all the things that I've learned, I think it boils down to believing in yourself, trusting yourself and your abilities, and fostering that sense of self-confidence. Because confidence, whether you have it or not, can determine a large path in your life, right? I look at my brother. Right? We grew up in the same household. He's always been enormously confident. I was not. And I was like, how was that? How is that he got all the confidence and I didn't get any, which has led me to this work that I do. And so finding that belief in yourself, trusting yourself, and having confidence in yourself is what I would say is psychological strength, because it enables you to do so much in your world.
I love it. That is absolutely the truth. Michele, this has just been fantastic. It has been so interesting I love it when people can take different either techniques or different bodies of work and put them together into something that's new and better than the sum of the parts. And that sounds like what you've done with rapid rewiring, taking all of these really powerful modalities that are happening sort of separately out there and putting it together into one way of really transforming people's lives. So I so appreciate you being here, sharing your expertise, having so many resources for people to just get started and, really start this journey for themselves. So appreciate you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, April. It's been a real pleasure and a yummy conversation. I can geek out on this stuff all day long.
I totally agree. It's a simple fact that nearly everyone in the world could benefit from building psychological strength. But not everyone will put in the time and effort to do so. But today you did. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Building Psychological Strength. Now, if you're interested in building the mental toughness, confidence, and resilience you need to thrive through life's ups and downs, visit us at www.peakmindpsychology.com. Also, if there's someone in your life who could benefit from this episode, please share it with them. And if you yourself found this episode valuable, meaning if you took away even one insight that you can use to build psychological strength in your own life, we would so appreciate it if you would drop us a rating and a review on iTunes. The thing is, the more ratings and reviews we have, the easier it is to get this powerful and important content out to the people who need to hear it. Remember, your mind can be your most valuable asset or your biggest liability, and you get to choose. So choose wisely, my friend. And I'll see you next time on Building Psychological Strength.